Welcome to the top of the hour. The date is June 2nd, 1720. If you are an English colonist living in the Americas, you do not have push notifications. You have exactly one broadcast connecting you to the rest of the empire, and it just rolled off the press. Look closely at this masthead, the American Weekly Mercury, published in Philadelphia. It's the colony's daily teleprompter. Our lead dispatch from Rome reveals anxiety in the papacy. The kingdom of Sicily is being allocated in a way that worries the local clergy. To maintain the balance of power, the Pope is opening his coffers. He offers a 200,000 crown bribe to the emperor, specifically to pay for the contributions and quarters of imperial troops and avoid further conflict. Meanwhile, the continent is in motion. Prussia and Sweden conclude a treaty. Further east, ominous reports emerge. The Russians fit out a fleet, promising a spring show of force. For a reader in Philadelphia, these reports are early warnings. A failed treaty in Sweden or a new Russian fleet in the Baltic can shift the movements of the entire British Navy, potentially leaving American trade routes exposed to the privateers mentioned later in this very paper. Let's turn to the National Desk. Up north, a bulletin out of Boston confirms the new chain of command. William Burnett has been officially appointed as the new governor of New York. Down in New York City itself, the streets were loud and bright last week to celebrate His Majesty's birthday. The local garrison and militia marched, firing 3 coordinated volleys. As the sun set, houses were illuminated across town, and the night concluded with the firing of the great guns. Burning expensive powder and illuminating the town serves a distinct purpose. On the edge of a rugged frontier, these synchronized military displays remind the colonial public that the Crown's authority is present and heavily armed. Looking at this historical maritime map, you can trace the exposed navigation lines connecting the Americas. The Atlantic Ocean was a zone where merchant ships were frequently targeted by rival empires, and our maritime desk has reports of recent captures. A small sloop out of Woodbridge, New Jersey, was sailing near the coast of Virginia when it was intercepted and taken by a Spanish privateer operating out of St. Augustine. The captors put 3 Frenchmen on board to control the vessel, but under the cover of night, the English mate and a single sailor overpowered all 3 guards, seized the helm, and steered the ship to safety. We see this same struggle in a dispatch printed under Philadelphia, June 2nd. It details the capture of the sloop Glasgow. She was taken off the bar of Carolina by a privateer out of Havana, carrying 2 guns and 50 men. The privateer captain left 5 armed Spaniards on board the Glasgow to guard the prize and watch over 3 captive English sailors, William Worden, Walter Spry, and William Davis. At 10 o'clock at night, William Davis crept up to the Spanish helmsman in the dark and brought a heavy hatchet crashing down. The helmsman tried to get back up, but Davis struck him again, with more vigor, to neutralize the threat. The remaining 4 Spaniards, seeing their comrade dead on the deck, immediately dropped their weapons and begged for quarter. Davis, Worden, and Spry locked their former captors in the steerage and sailed the Glasgow into Philadelphia harbor, bringing both their ship and their prisoners into port. These events show that merchant travel was rarely just about sailing. In an era of privateers, the survival of a cargo often came down to the willingness of the crew to physically fight for their ship. Finally, we have an update on the Carolina mutineers who hijacked Mr. Gregory's schooner. The paper describes a barbarous act. The rogue crew bound the ship's owner and his son, threw them into a boat to drift at sea, and fled toward the West Indies. Their flight was short-lived. A storm off Bermuda shattered their rigging and pushed the battered ship back to Cape Henlopen, where the mutineers ran aground and fled into the woods. Publishers printed these updates as both news and a warning. The stories of stranded mutineers served to reinforce the necessity of shipboard discipline in a world where the law was often miles away. That concludes our broadcast for June 2nd, 1720. Looking across these columns, we see a world where the highest levels of diplomacy share space with the most desperate acts of shipboard rebellion. On one side of the page, the Pope offers a fortune in crowns to settle European borders. On the other, a sailor in Philadelphia swings a hatchet to reclaim his livelihood.
Early newspapers like the American weekly Mercury did more than report gossip. They placed the local reader inside a much larger network of treaties, trade, and conflict. It made the distant movements of kings and popes feel as relevant as the ships currently sitting in Philadelphia's harbor.
The Daily Dispatch, history in print.